Some months ago, there was a video that I did reacting to the whole drama behind the reactions to Bill Burr having a bit about women's sports, mainly the WNBA. I didn't really go in that video into like Bill Burr himself or his bit. It was more so just the reactions of other people and just a general opinion on things of women's sports. So today I kind of wanted to do a video just talking about why I love women's sports as much as I do, and why it was such a what things led to being such an influence for me on becoming such a big fan of women's sports. Because in that video I mentioned a lot about how I grew up really enjoying women's sports, and that a lot of my favorite teams as an adult are female teams, like the United States Women's National Team and Angel City FC and so on. So if you watch that video, it'll be to your left or to your right. So you can go ahead and click that at the end of this video or whatever, and watch it if you want to. Choice is yours. But whatever, everybody, it's your boy Nimbus here, the Gamer Archer. Hope you all are having a good day. Hope you all feel good, looking, smelling good, and welcome to my channel. Do all the things the algorithm likes to help this channel grow. So I mentioned before that for me, women's sports is a massive thing. Women's sports aren't just something that just happens in the background of my life, and for how it is for most guys out there, and you just hear about it and you don't watch it, things like that. I watch women's sports probably more than I watch any other form of sports, mostly because I watch a lot of soccer, and I tend to watch more women's soccer than I watch men's soccer because I don't watch the MLS, but I do watch the nwsl. I rarely watch U.S. men's team play soccer, but I'll watch the women's team every time they're playing a game. So there's influence there. And today's video, I want to talk about those influences. I'm talking about why I'm so big into women's sports and where those influences lie, and how I got to where I am when it comes to the fact that most of my favorite preferred to watch sports involve women. And it's not the thing that you would think it would be when it comes to a guy who watches women's sports. It's not anything sexual or attraction based. It's just more entertainment and a level of the game. So to start things off, when it comes to what inspired my love for women's sports, you have to go way back, and by way back I mean my childhood, and all the way back to the big influences of the 1990s and the early 2000s. At this time period, especially the late 90s and early 2000s, that big old mouse Disney was at its peak of influencing the young, the minds of the young. Excuse me, my butchered English right there. But at that point, this is like the peak of Disney's original movies on the Disney Channel TV station. Not the movies that you see on like in theaters, but the movies that they would show on their TV show, on their TV network. And at that time, you're getting like just a lot of women content. Like you had the Xenon movies, you had like Cheetah Girls. Like there's just so many, like just a plethora of female-led TV shows and movies at that time period, like Lizzie McGuire, for example, and Kim Possible as an animation. But those are just the TV shows. Movie-wise, there was a ton of them. But one of the ones that always stand out the most is their sport ones. A lot of Disney sport movies in the late 90s and early 2000s have female leads. You have movies like Rip Girls, which is a movie, generally involving surfing. That's not the entire plot, but the main character is a surfer. So you get that impression there. And you had like a movie like Go Figure, which is a figure skater who turned to a hockey player. And I love hockey. So this is where like a lot of those influences start to lie. I mentioned before that, and I mentioned in that video before, that there was a movie from Disney Channel where there was these two twins who played basketball. It was called Double Teamed, and in that movie, that's where like that influence of wanting to like watch women play basketball became a thing for me, because that movie came out like around 2002, and around that same time frame, or a split period of time in the early 2000s, the best women's basketball team was in my hometown of Detroit, at the Detroit Shock. So there's this movie that I'm watching a lot on Disney Channel called Double Teamed, and there's also Detroit Shock, who were one of the best teams in women's basketball. So just the influence is just there. The influence is flowing, and I'm digging it. They also have movies like Motocross, which was this girl who she cut her hair and she tried to impersonate as a man to take part in motocross tournaments and against her father's wishes, which if you that sounds familiar to you because it is familiar to you. It's from Mulan, which is also a Disney movie. So they kind of copied pasted the idea of Mulan, you know, a girl who wants to serve in the military, cuts her hair to appear as a man, going against her father's will. Same thing here. So you had movies like Motocross and Rip Girls and Go Figure and Double Teamed, and there's more movies like that, but there's also movies like Right on Track, which, you know, that started a whole nother thing, like involving my life and my fandom. Not necessarily like about Right on Track is a racing movie starring Beverly Mitchell and Brie Larson. I'm not really into NASCAR or racing in general. I'll play racing video games, but I'm really into like the idea of watching. Like I don't watch racing. That's the thing I'm trying to say here. But Right on Track did have an influence on me because one of my top 5 favorite actresses of all time is in that movie, which is Brie Larson. Brie Larson is one of my top 5 favorite actresses, and she also happens to play my second favorite Marvel character of all time, which is Captain Marvel. So, you know, you can kind of look back at that Right on Track and where we are now with like Marvel, like, yo, this person, I've seen so many of her films. But anyways, this isn't about my fandom of Brie Larson. It's about my fandom of women's sports and how we got to this, how I got to this point. So throughout all of that, including the late 90s, there was also just a massive moment. The massive moment was watching this network on Nickelodeon. So we're leaving Disney Channel. We're going to another network called Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon had a sub network known as Nick Gas, and Nick Gas was basically the sports center, or like the ESPN for Nickelodeon. You know, they would showcase a lot of sport themed TV shows and sport themed game shows. They would showcase a lot of young athletes, both male and female. And throughout all that time, I was seeing a lot of one particular person who did get me into a sport I never thought I was going to get into, which is tennis. And that person was Maria Sharapova. I want to show you this clip, and in this is the exact clip that made me a tennis fan and made me a Sharapova fan.
My workouts don't just take place on the tennis court. It's time to sweat, fitness style.
Strengthen. Stay up.
I've always had to work on my fitness. It's a big part of your game.
Look ahead, look ahead.
You have to work on your strength.
Go. Go. Lift them up, put them down. Lift them up, put them down. Don't lose it. Come on, concentrate.
You have to work on your footwork.
Toes off the ground, heels off the ground.
I'm out 4 or 5 times a week doing fitness after I play.
Rock it out both sides.
I usually do a lot of movement stuff, some core stuff.
Go 8 times. Touch your heel to the ground. Even more, even more. Look ahead, look ahead.
It takes a lot of endurance out of you. Okay guys, workout over. See you next time on Nick Gas. Whew, I need a break.
So in that clip, Maria is, I think, 15 or 16 years old, and I'm around 10 or 11 years old. I became a massive Maria Sharapova fan, which made me a massive tennis fan. So because of Maria Sharapova, because of Nick Gas in that clip, I started watching tennis, which became one of my favorite sports. You know, I got to watch the late years of Andre Agassi, the early years of Andy Roddick when it comes to the Americans who weren't really the best when it comes to the men's side. But at the same time, as Maria Sharapova was getting into tennis, we're also seeing, you know, the Williams sisters, Venus and Serena. We're seeing Rafael Nadal, who was my favorite male player. So Sharapova was my favorite female player, and Nadal my favorite male player. So it was great for me to watch tennis because they're both great players who were winning pretty much a lot. The only time Maria wasn't winning was when she was losing to Serena. You know, it is what it is. But yeah, I was kind of like the I don't know what the word to use when it comes to my family, but everyone else is cheering for like Serena, and then I'm cheering for Maria. You know, and it was biased. You know, Maria is definitely, you know, when it came to me seeing her and I was 10, 11 years old, it was like, wow, look at her. And like that was definitely like, I try to say, like, you know, my interest in women's sports isn't about attraction and things like that, but my interest in Maria Sharapova at that time was definitely she's freaking gorgeous. And I started watching tennis because I want to see more of her. And so, that was a big influence on me watching tennis. So when it comes to me and women's sports, there's always this beginning. There's always a beginning and why I got interested in it. And when I started watching soccer, for example, which is my favorite sport now, I didn't start watching soccer until late. Like, I want to say 2013 or 14, maybe a little earlier. I didn't get into soccer until pretty late, maybe 2011. But we can say a safe year of 2011. And so at this time, we're seeing like the big explosion of the popularity, or I want to say popularity, but like the success of the United States women's national team. So I'm watching their games all the time, and I'm seeing Abby Wambach, who was an amazing player, seeing women like Heather O'Reilly and Becky Sauerbrunn. And my favorite player in women's soccer is Christian Press. Amazing. Also get to see the GOAT, Carly Lloyd. To me, she's the best female soccer player of all time. She's the Messi of soccer, of women's soccer at least. And so we're seeing like all these games, and it's so entertaining and great. Like, it's just massive, and it all lacked any of that toxic drama that exists in men's soccer. Women's soccer was all about just go play, do your best, win the game, get the championship, you're done. There was no real, fandom that was like making things worse or making it toxic. Like, if you watch a game that involves Messi, you're constantly getting notifications just going through Twitter, or if you're watching a live stream, you're seeing like a chat row, just Ronaldo fans on Messi sucks, Ronaldo's better. You watching Ronaldo games, it's the other way around, where it's Messi fans, Pinaldo, Messi's the best. You're a Man United fan, you're watching Man United play, they're playing some useless team like fucking Fulham, and you get like Chelsea and Arsenal and then Liverpool fans just feeding toxic shit to you. You're a Madrid fan and you're watching them play against freaking some useless freaking La Liga team, freaking like, and then you got Barcelona fans, Atletico fans coming in like, Madrid sucks, you're nothing without Ronaldo. And it's like, you don't get that with women's soccer. Women's soccer is a little bit more respect there. There's a little bit more less toxicity when it comes to the player base. If there's any bickering, it's more so between the fans who are like arguing about who should be in a certain 11 and things like that, more so than Mata is better than Carly Lloyd. Like, you don't see like that kind of dialogue. The most important for me when it comes to women's sports is entertainment. Women's sports, for my entire life, when it comes to watching sports, like I said, there's been like moments where there was a beginning to why I got into a specific sport. And ever since I got into it, I've enjoyed thoroughly watching it. I've enjoyed partaking in it. I've enjoyed talking about it. I've enjoyed investing in it. I've enjoyed, what I see in that sport. And I feel like I'm a part of it. I feel like I'm a part of, a social change potentially when it comes to the growth of women's sports, and the potential of men getting into women's sports. Because society talks a lot about how the reason why women's sports don't do so well is because men are watching it. And it's like, men do watch women's sports, just not in the droves that we watch men's sports. But that's also the same for women. The numbers don't lie that more women watch men's sports than women's sports. It's not just a men are avoiding the sport situation. That's not the situation at all. It's just how it is that both genders, even it just so happens that everyone involved, be it male, female, non-binary, etc., are preferably watching men's sports over women's sports. But that doesn't necessarily mean that no one's watching women's sports. It's just a numbers thing and a popularity thing. And if you look at all the numbers, they're getting higher and higher and higher and higher and higher. NWSL posted their numbers for the last season, and it's the best season that they've had yet. That's going to continue. They're going to have higher and higher numbers every single year because the growth of women's sports is growing, and the popularity is growing, especially around the world, where you see like Barcelona's women's soccer team, who's very dominant. They're one of their players, forgot her name. Sorry, this isn't a scripted video, so there's not gonna be names that I have written down, but their player won the Ballon d'Or for women's soccer. And Chelsea has a very good women's soccer team as well. And just again, internationally, women's soccer is still a very massive thing, just as it is massive with men. But this love for women's sports also goes into my love for video games. You know, when it comes to video games, I play with the women's teams in FIFA. You know, and there's actually an achievement on Xbox, and it's one of the lowest achievements, the lowest score, like in terms of like how many people get it. Like they show you like a percentage. I think it's like 1%. There was like an article where it was like 1% of people have the Women's World Cup achievement in FIFA. I have that achievement because I played the women's team and I play FIFA. My favorite team, and I enjoy it, and I love video games, and I love them. And I've also played with WNBA players in NBA games. You know, I'm drawn to it, and I would definitely freaking do like a my career with a female player and things like that. And even when it comes to another love of mine, which is combat sports, you know, the UFC, Invicta, which is a all women's MMA brand. You know, I have a number of created characters in UFC video games that are female, and a lot of my favorite fighters are the female fighters, and less like there's some like obviously when you watch any kind of sport you love, you're gonna have fans, you're gonna have like fandoms, and when it comes to like, you know, the males too, like Anderson Silva, you know, Shogun, who was my favorite fighter of all time, you know, guys like that. But when it came to women, like I was watching before everyone else was getting into the craze of being big fans of, like, you know, UFC fighters that were women. And I was watching Gina Carano in Strikeforce, and I was watching Rousey, and, you know, watching Misha Tate and Sarah McMahon and Liz Carmouche. Like those are names that a lot of people who watch MMA right now don't even know who Liz Carmouche is. But like, you know, watching people like them, and even now Valentina Shevchenko and Amanda Nunes and Juliana Pena and so on and so on and so on, women's sports is definitely growing, and I love how much it's growing. I love how invested not only I am into it, but I love when I see other people showing interest in it, because it's like, this is good. It's good to finally see people who are interested, and it's good to be able to talk to people about it, because a lot of the time when I was growing up, I didn't have like a lot of avenues to have conversations about women's sports. You know, I can talk about men's sports with basically anyone who I was around, but women's sports, there wasn't like a lot of people when I was growing up who were into it. And you could look at some things a certain way of like, oh, Disney influenced you by throwing all these TV shows at you that were clearly, you know, favoring an agenda or a side. You know how people are on the internet. They think everything's, you know, an agenda. But I'm thankful for it, because I love what I've seen of those films, and I love where I am now when it comes to women's sports. So the whole point of this video was generally just to talk about why I love women's sports and why I had the thought process that I had in that video, and more so because I also don't want people who see that video to cherry pick any potential negativity within that video, because that happens a lot. That happens a lot when you do a video and you might say something negative, and people like, oh, typical guy response, you're saying that because you don't like women's sports, you don't watch women's sports. And it's like, hold on, just because I said what I said about the WNBA in that video doesn't mean I dislike women's sports. That's not what that means at all. You know, I watch more women's sports than most women do. So missing with that, like, you couldn't name freaking 5 WNBA players. I can name a whole fucking team of players, not just the team itself. You know, you don't watch women's MMA, you don't watch women's soccer and things like that. You can probably only name, like, most women in the United States, this isn't for the whole world, but most women in the United States could only name 2 tennis players, Venus and Serena. They have no idea who Naomi Osaka is. They have no idea who Coco Cuff is. They have no idea who Maria Sharapova is, or Kim Clijsters. They don't know who these people are. They just know who they see in articles on social media. They know who, you know, is being plastered over TV nonstop, and that's basically it. Not real fans. Real fans know the players. They know the games in and out. They watch the sport whenever it's airing and things like that. So when it comes to, like, going back to the thought of investing, you know, I own, I want to say 4 soccer jerseys. 2 of them are men and 2 of them are women. 2 of those women are the same person. You know, I have a Christian Press United States jersey, and I have a Christian Press Man United jersey. I also have a Messi jersey, and also have a Heung-min Son jersey from the Tottenham Spurs. Not a Spurs fan. I'm just a really big fan of Heung-min Son, but I couldn't get a South Korea version, so I got Tottenham. Different story to this switch. We're not talking about that. We're talking about, you know, women's soccer. So when it comes to, I always find like it's important to like to point that out, that like I don't own any American merch for the men's team because I don't really care about the men's team all that much. Even when it came to like this the current World Cup, this has been recorded while the men's World Cup is going on. I didn't really care about the U.S. team. Everyone else in America is, you know, loving them and throwing, you know, they can do it, you know, things like that. And I'm like, go Brazil. Because when it came to like the men's national team, I was always more Brazil fan than, you know, the U.S. men's team, because I just didn't care about the U.S. men's team. You know, they sucked when I got into soccer. You know, when I did get to soccer, people who are watching were, you know, guys like Ronaldinho and, you know, the real Ronaldo, and, you know, leading into guys like Neymar and Thiago and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, Brazil was more like my favorite team on the national stage when it came to men's soccer, while the women's team was the United States, because they, you know, they were the dominant ones, and that's who I was seeing. I was seeing that dominance, and like, when you're getting to a sport, you tend to be drawn to who's dominating more so than anything else, because, you know, especially when you're American in the kind of soccer, because you don't really have that Barcelona or Man United or Liverpool or Man City, or you don't have any of those like local, you know, clubs that you can cheer for. But this video has gone on long enough. You know, I don't want this video to be like too long. I don't really do a lot of video essays, and I don't want to consider this a video essay because it's no script. I feel like video essays usually have a script that are well thought out, things like that. This is just all just me kind of just rambling about my love for women's sports. If people like it, cool. If they don't, hey, it was just, this is my channel on YouTube is more so just me emptying my head. I don't really have a lot of friends, so I don't really get a chance to just express myself a lot. My content on both Twitch and YouTube is me expressing myself. That's what the video is. This is me just expressing myself when it comes to my love for women's sports. You know, if people feel something about it, again, any reaction is a good reaction, as Vince McMahon always freaking says. And even when it comes to like that, when it comes to like professional wrestling, you know, I was always more of a fan of the women who were actual like wrestlers. I never cared about the eye candy. I never cared about the divas. Never cared about the women who were in WWE who were just there for you to look at them. I was always drawn to the real wrestlers, and came to pro wrestling, like, you know, like China, you know. Like, I was always drawn to that. And even like right now is the best time for women wrestling, because you have people like Rhea Ripley and, you know, the four horsewomen, and not the MMA version, the WWE version of, you know, Bayley and Sasha Banks and Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch. You also got Bianca Belair, who's amazing. You have so many women across WWE, into the AEW, into the indie scene, who are legitimate wrestlers, and it's great. I love that way more than the whole like that trash that used to be for wrestling when it came to like the bra and panty matches, the mud wrestling matches. Like, fuck off with that. I want to see real wrestlers, not eye candy. But yeah, anyways, when I was like posting the end of the video, not get into that topic of like pro wrestling and things like that. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, a comment, and subscribe to all that good stuff. Do all these algorithm likes. Follow me on Twitch. Link to be in this box below. I'm your boy, nwsl, the gamer archer, fan of the back-to-back Big Ten champions, University of Michigan. Yeah, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Y'all stay safe. Be kind to another. Be true to yourselves, and, you know, watch some sports. You know, if you're curious about watching some women's sports and you would never watch a game, watch a game. You might be entertained more so watching the NWSL or the U.S. Women's National Team, or watching a Valentina Shevchenko fight, or watching a Clarissa Shields fight, you know, who's probably the best female boxer we've ever seen, potentially, maybe, you know. Just watch the content. That's all I'm trying to say. You know, a lot of people out there, they give their opinions on everything without watching it or experiencing it. You have no opinion if you didn't experience it. You have no opinion if you didn't watch it. Do those things. Experience life. Experience all this stuff. And then you'll have a better outlook. It might be more entertained. Like I said, you might be more entertained watching women's sports than you do with men's sports. In some situations, like, I'll never be able to change Americans' minds when it comes to like football. Like, I don't know if there's a women's football league. I think there actually is, but that's not going to become anything near what basically what's now our religion. America's religion is football, and nothing's going to ever come over the NFL and college football. But anyways, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Like I said, y'all stay safe. I'm your boy Novus. I'm out of here. Deuces.